Hello and welcome to the show. Today we're going to be continuing the value conversation that we started yesterday. So, the question that we're going to look at today is: should you be delivering education and should you be giving insights as a means of showing value in business? Now, the idea behind this is this: if you check the socials, you're paying attention to what people are writing on LinkedIn, Instagram. Yeah, there's lots of business content on Instagram. There are folks that say if you tell the customer, if you tell your business associate, if you tell the potential investor, if you tell whoever it is that you're talking to, if you tell them something they don't know about their industry, about their transactions, about their present context, then they're going to think that you're a valuable resource to have around. And that's going to be because you're a very useful person because of the breadth of knowledge that you have and because of the experience that you have. So that's the idea behind this. I want to show I'm valuable because of my knowledge and because of my experience. So I'm going to tell them something that they don't know. So, does this work? Is this a means of showing value in business? The answer is yes, if you put it this way, because it's valuable to deliver education and insights because it helps the other person achieve their goals of being in business with you. So, any education you have, go ahead, educate the person. Any insights that you have, go ahead, deliver those insights. However, there's a problem. People from this school fall into a trap or fall into an error of doing business because what they do is that the moment they meet someone, they try to lead off with education and they try to start off with a presentation. That's the person who meets someone, and let's say because you sell insurance and it's obvious that this person knows nothing about insurance, you first thing you meet the person, you start off by giving them the history of insurance in Nigeria, the reason why insurance is a good business idea for risk mitigation or maybe for investing or for savings, and the wonderful things that insurance can do. So that's the kind of behavior that you see. The person who is doing forever living, or the person who is selling free range eggs, chickens that are not raised on in coops but are raised on poultry farms and then they roam free. They start off with this whole education thing. They start off with the whole presentation thing. They're trying to start off the business relationships with insight. So if you're one of those people who believes in this whole delivering value through um, uh, education and insight, this is one of the traps, or one of the errors of doing business that you fall into. You start leading with education, you start leading with insight, and you start leading with um, presentations and proposals and all of that. Now, the mistake that you make in this approach is because you're trying to educate and to deliver insights when you know nothing about the gaps of information in the person's knowledge or how valuable the information is going to be to them. So, back to the insurance thing. You might approach someone, you start with a history lesson about how the insurance industry has changed in Nigeria and how it's very good for mitigating risk and for getting for creating investments and savings opportunities. Now, the thing is, this person might already be well versed in insurance. The person might already be a CFA. It's just that perhaps the person has a much more aggressive investment appetite. They're looking for something that has much more substantial returns beyond what your insurance company is going to offer, which is you're going to be above inflation. The person might be too educated for that level. But the thing is, you've already goofed, you've already put your foot forward, you've already started off on the whole education and insight um, thing because you have no idea about the person's gaps in knowledge and you don't know how valuable the information is going to be to them. Now, an example of this, for those of you who listen to the podcast regularly, you remember a previous episode that was titled Strategies from Outreach to Conversion. Yeah, I think that was it. Strategies from outreach to conversion. That's strategies for finding and converting potential customers. Now, I'm not the one who came up with that title because I think titles should be a whole lot simpler. Even if we're going to discuss outreach, conversion, things like that. I'd rather use simpler titles so I don't scare folks away. But anyway, since that podcast episode was supposed to be a summary of a session that I had with Nest and Foundry, that are both innovation hubs based in Lagos, and that was on the 2nd of May. So since it was supposed to be a summary of the things that we talked about and the case studies, I prepared that as a summary so that people who attended the session and who wanted a concise summary will be able to take the podcast episode and then listen to it and have a 20-minute summary of basically everything that went down, and also for the people who couldn't make it. So I decided to just use the exact title that I was given. So if you're checking the podcast after you're done listening to this one, it's Strategies from Outreach to Conversion. I'm sure about that part. The second thing about finding and converting potential customers, I'm not sure if that was there or in that form. So just search Strategies from Outreach to Conversion. So, where was I? Okay, yes. So, the thing went down on the 2nd of May. The organizers were Nest Innovation Hub and then Foundry. I can't remember exactly what Foundry is, but I know that they're both in the innovation and tech space. They're based in Lagos. So for those of you Lagos people, check them out on Instagram, Google them. Go there. Lots of nice business resources that you can get from them, and they also have co-working spaces, so you can get access to networks, other people who are thinking in the same way that you are when it comes to business investments or career progression. So there was a member of the cohort there, and we used her as a case study. She's into food processing, and what her company does is they produce gruels, they produce powders and meals. The process corn. They do lots of stuff, but what we were talking about at that particular session was a new line, which was a new baby food line of powdered meals from corn, from millet, those sorts of things, to rival the local akamu. Now, akamu is for those of you who are listeners, who are foreign listeners, akamu is sort of like custard. Okay, yes. Let's say akamu is like custard, except that custard is made, I think, with eggs and some kind of flours. But akamu is made from grain, so corn and millet. Okay, well, everybody knows what corn is, whether you're in Nigeria or in Russia or America. So we all know what corn is. So millet looks like corn, but I think is brown and smaller. So different nutritional value, different taste palettes, stuff like that. But bottom line, the reason why akamu is popular in these parts of the world is it's an easy alternative for mothers who are trying to wean their babies. So babies have been bred exclusively on breast milk for the last, let's say, 3 to 6 months or whatever. You're ready to get back to work, so you're looking for something to ease them into eating solid food. And you can't start with all the hard stuff because baby's going to choke. So you look for akamu. It has the same consistency as custard, so it solves a lot of problems for working class mothers getting ready to go back to work. And so this lady has new baby food, but her akamu is processed into a powder. The traditional thing in this part of the world is that akamu is processed into a paste, which has to be stored properly in the right cool conditions and then prepared with hot water. Now, there's this perception, rightly or wrongly, by young mothers, that the traditional method, the one that you prepare into a paste and you have to store in water and then refrigerate it or put it in a cold environment, is more natural and has no preservatives and therefore is better for the children. So that's the perception around old school akamu, or wet pap as people like to call it. And they think new school akamu, the dry one that is a powdered form, has preservatives and blah blah blah. That's the perception. So this lady in question was spending a lot of time educating mothers as to why the powdered variety is just as healthy and has no preservatives. So that's how she was starting off her conversations. Hello, good morning, ma. I noticed you're using pap for your baby, blah blah blah. I have this great product. It's healthy, no preservatives, blah blah blah. The usual thing. Educating her and giving her insight. And she was saying that the approach didn't seem to be working and she was spending too much time educating people. My take was that from a traditional sales perspective, if you're spending a lot of time educating people, then you're probably talking to the wrong person. We should be spending more time in qualification and discovery. That's trying to figure out who is this person that I'm talking to, what problem do they have, what vision are they working towards, what have they tried in the past, why didn't any of these things work. And then with that knowledge, you now know how to tailor your presentation because you have all the information that you need to be able to address all their concerns. And of course, you'll be able to do so effectively because you have all the background information that you need. So my approach was I asked this lady a few questions because I was trying to figure out who exactly was this entrepreneur talking to. Did she find out about how they use the product or what problems they are trying to solve? Those sorts of things. Now, after a couple of conversations with this lady, this happened during the session. This happened over Zoom, so other members of the cohort could witness and then also see the value of trying to figure out discovery and qualification before you start going into your presentation, so they could see the value of it firsthand. So the intel that we got from the conversation was this: this young entrepreneur was talking to mothers who have young babies. Of course, it makes sense because what you're selling is gruels and meals. So of course, these are the kind of people that you'd be talking to. Adults, yeah, some adults like akamu, like I like custard. But typically in this part of the world, anyway, you're not going to find lots of adults or men taking akamu and stuff like that. So yeah, so in this part of the world, they think it's a baby thing. So yes, she's talking to mothers of babies. That's good. It makes sense. Working class mothers, that's good. But then we also discovered that the people she was talking to usually have a trusted help at home, someone that they've been with for years, or they have a sibling at home to take care of the kids. And from a Nigerian perspective, especially as someone who's a young parent myself, I could see exactly what the problem was. The traditional wet pap needs to be preserved carefully. Like I said, it is made into a paste. You put the paste in a bowl, you pour a lot of water until the paste is submerged, and then you keep that in a cool room if you guys don't have a fridge, or you keep that in the fridge. So it needs to be preserved carefully. And it also needs to be transported carefully because remember, you're transporting a liquid paste that has been submerged in water. So if you're trying to take it to a creche so that they can make it for your child to eat later on, it's not going to be convenient transporting that. It also has to be prepared at the right temperature for it to be safe enough to eat by babies. So if you make it with water and the water is not piping hot, then not the carbohydrates, what do you call them? Is it carbohydrates? And basically it doesn't get broken down right, and you have the babies eating stuff that is going to make their tummy run at the end of the day. So it has to be prepared right. It has to be piping hot water, water that you've taken off the fire right now, or off the electric kettle right now. So if you are a mother and you have trusted help at home, you don't need to transport the pap. It can stay in the cold room or it can stay in the kitchen. If you have access to constant power, you have a generator, you have an inverter, you have a whatever it is, then you have no problem with storing the pap because it's always going to be in a nice cold room because the fans work, or a nice cool fridge. Then also, if the mom has a trusted help at home, the person has ready access to boiling water. Is the baby hungry now? You just put the water on the stove and you're going to have piping hot water in 5 minutes, and then you feed the baby. So people who have all these people in this situation, they don't have any problem that the dry pap can solve. You can spend all your time educating them and giving them insight. The truth is, they're comfortable the way they are because there is no problem. It is being stored okay at home. There's someone that I trust who is going to make it the right way, and there's hot water, so there's no problem that it can solve. Now, other parents like my wife and I, for instance, who had no trusted help over here in Abuja, we had to drop off the kids at the creche. So for us, the first time that we came across this powdered option, it made a lot of sense because powder can be transported safely. It's in a tin. I can transport it safely, whether the atmosphere is hot or whether it's cold. It doesn't need cold storage. It's a powder. That's the advantage of having powders. And then it can be prepared safely, even if the water isn't piping hot. So it was okay to take a container of powder, to take a flask with water, with hot water in it. Over time, the water might go from hot to warm to maybe tepid. But bottom line is, if the kids are going to be out for 3-4 hours, we'd be fine with the flask. So we could store the water in the flask, and that way, anyone could prepare it. We could drop off the powder and the flask at the creche. The attendants can mix it quite easily. Put the powder in the bowl and pour in the water in the flask. I mean, how hard can that be? So long as the person washes their hands, it's going to be prepared in a very sanitary way. So you're not going to have the problems of you try to transport the paste in the water, but then you got stuck in traffic, and then it was too hot, and then the pap started going bad, and then the attendant tried making it, didn't realize that the pap was going sour, and then gave it to the baby, and then the next day you guys are in the hospital because baby is crying all the time, she's vomiting, and she's pooping all over the place. So the powdered option worked perfectly well for parents in my own circumstance, me and my wife's circumstance, because we could leave this with the creche. If our cousins were visiting, we could leave it with a cousin. If someone offered to babysit, we could leave it with them, and it was not going to create any fuss at all. So those are the reasons why my wife and I and other kinds of parents gravitate towards the more modern powdered Akamu options or formulas. So in this case, giving insights or educating the parents on the processing methods, on the nutritional value, on the ease of transportation, on the safety of preparation, and blah, blah, blah. If you're starting off your business conversations like this young entrepreneur was, you're wasting time for both you and both the potential customer. You're wasting time because chances of this person buying are slim. They don't have a need. And you're wasting the other person's time because the person, quite frankly, doesn't think she has a problem and she's just being polite. She doesn't want to ruin your hustle, so she's staying there and she's listening to you. But actually, your education and your insight in this case are not going to move the needle because there is no need. So that's the problem that regular business folks like you and I face. So it's much more important to have qualification conversations, discovery conversations. If you're new listening to the show, there are podcast episodes that deal with that. But the whole point of this is you're speaking with potential customers, you're speaking with business associates, you're speaking with investors, whatever, because we have sales conversations and business development conversations all the time, not just when we're selling products, but when we're also trying to raise money. So we're having conversations and we're trying to figure out, who is this person? Do they have a problem? What vision are they trying to achieve? Do they think this is a project worth embarking on now? We ask all these questions before we launch into a campaign of giving education and insight. Starting with education and insight, that's a problem. So, if you have a great investment opportunity, you found out that you can sell processed hibiscus flowers, you can sell it to Egypt and you can make tons of money. Then, you giving all the insight into the world is not going to move someone who is looking for business opportunities, yes, but the person wants stable returns without the risk of the person who is the person who is importing in Egypt. Is the person going to pay us or not? Will they pay in full or not? What is the risk of the goods getting damaged in transit or not? Let's see, what else? Political risk. What if it gets to Egypt and then there's another coup? Okay. As at the time of this podcast, I don't think they've had a coup in the last maybe 5 or 10 years. But and I guess in this part of the world, those are stuff that we pay attention to. So what if we send it and then there's a coup, and because of that, they stop operations in the ports. So the person might be looking for stable returns without all the hassles of export. Person wants a place where they can park their money for 5 years, and so because of that they're looking into government bonds or they're looking into money market instruments and stuff like that. All the education that you're going to give and all the insight is just going to go over the person's head. The person will be polite and the person will listen because you're a smart young man or you're a smart young woman, they want to support your hustle. So they'll listen and they'll say, let me think about it, and you're like, correct, I'm feeling good. I had a good conversation. You go home, you're speaking to your wife or you're speaking to your girlfriend or your husband or your boyfriend, and you tell them, I had 5 wonderful conversations today with potential investors, but Nothing is going to come out of those conversations because there's a mismatch here in investment timelines, in risk appetite, in business solvency or personal solvency. That's how much money that the individual has to play with, expected returns on investment, things like that. There's a mismatch. That deal is never going to happen. You had nice, polite conversations with people who are trying to encourage you, but it's not going to turn into a business deal. So don't start off business conversations with education and insight first. Be sure you're speaking to the right person first before you launch into all that education and to all that insight in order to be a valuable person, or rather a valuable resource. So, if you have premature presentation syndrome, or if you try to consummate business relationships from the beginning without the small talk that helps you try and figure out what kind of business relationship you're both looking for, then connect with me on LinkedIn because every problem has a solution. So that's all for today. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. It's called Sales for the Nigerian Business Person. It's available on Spotify, Google, Apple, iTunes, Pocket Cast, Overcast, any podcast player of your choice, one that you're listening to right now. Remember also to connect with me on LinkedIn. The name is Tabeshima Ayede. You have a problem with the spelling, it's in the podcast profile, whatever player that you're listening to right now. So remember, for those of you who still look out for me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, I'm not spending much time on those platforms anymore. I'll probably check them maybe once a week. So if you've already reached out to me there, yeah, I'll respond to you, but it's not going to be immediate like if you were to hook up with me on LinkedIn. So thanks for listening, and I'll catch you guys at the next episode.